Guys, welcome back to Matthew Vinyl. In today's video, I'll be talking about my top 15 favourite albums of all time. Now, of course, this list is, of course, my own opinion, so your opinion will definitely differ from mine. Most of the albums in this list are from the following decades of the 1950s and the 1960s, but there is some from other decades too. So without further ado, I'll be starting with number 15 on the list. And number 15 is this fantastic album by Cliff Richard and the Shadows. This marks the 10th year anniversary of their mega music. Some outstanding songs by the Shadows are here too. I can't get enough of The Average Life of a Daily Man and Somewhere by the Sea. As that great late 60s rock and pop sound, definitely a strong 60s album. Now this album was released in 1968 on the EMI Columbia label, and again it does contain songs from Cliff Richard and the Shadows, but also most of them are them together, of course. Of course, Cliff Richard was never really that famous worldwide. He's one of the most successful British artists of all time in Britain. However, in countries like the United States, he never broke through. So this album could be considered a deep cut. So on this Cliff Richard album, you do have Cliff Richard and the Shadows together performing Don't Forget to Catch Me. Then the Shadows go on their own for Voyage to the Bottom of the Bath. And then it's back to Cliff and the Shadows with Not the Way It Should Be. And then again it goes back to the Shadows with Poem. And then that's Cliff Richard with The Dreams I Dream. And the Shadows with The Average Life of a Daily Man. Cliff and the Shadows with Somewhere by the Sea. The Shadows on their own again with Banana Man. Cliff and the Shadows performing Girl on the Bus. The Shadows performing The Magical Mrs. Clamps. Cliff and the Shadows performing Ooh La La, which is another great track. The Shadows performing Here I Go Again Loving You. Cliff and the Shadows performing What's Behind the Eyes of Mary, and the album finishes with the Shadows on their own performing the song Maggie's Samba. I'd give Established 1958 a 7 out of 10. And number 14 is Buddy Holly's debut album. He was of course featured on the Crickets 1957 album, but this is his debut under the Buddy Holly name. This album is just absolutely fantastic. Every song is performed so well. The hit song Peggy Sue is also featured here. The Buddy Holly self-titled album was released in 1958 on the Coral label. My favourite song from this album is Rave On, such a great song, and that is true. This album has a lot of great tracks. The track listed on this one is I'm Gonna Love You Too, fantastic song. Peggy Sue, of course, everyone knows that, it's a brilliant song. Look at Me, Listen to Me, Valley of Tears, Ready Teddy, Every Day, Millman Bringing No More Blues, Words of Love, which of course was later covered by the Beatles. Yours to the Square, Baby I Don't Care, of course that was also done by Elvis Presley too. Rave On, and it does end with a great song of Little Baby. This Buddy Holly album is absolutely fantastic. It's a very iconic album. If you haven't heard it, I do recommend it. I'd give Buddy Holly by Buddy Holly a solid 8 out of 10. And number 13 is the Hollies' 5th album, and it's nearly as good as Would You Believe, in my opinion. There are strong songs on both sides. The first Hollies album to be completely original. All songs were composed by Clark, Hicks and Nash. The Hollies for Certain Because was released on the EMI Parlophone label in 1966. My favourite songs are Pay You Back With Interest, Tell Me To My Face, Clown, Suspicious Look In Your Eyes, It's You and Stop Stop Stop. Songs in the album are What's Wrong With Where I Live, Pay You Back With Interest, which was a hit in the US, Tell Me To My Face, Clown, Suspicious Look in Your Eyes, It's You, High Class, Peculiar Situation, What Went Wrong, Crusader, Don't Even Think About Changing, and the album concludes with the hit single Stop Stop Stop. Now this album is absolutely fantastic. It is the Hollies at their best in terms of the pop and sort of psychedelic style. Again, the song that does stand out the most to me is definitely It's You, which was the B-side to Stop Stop Stop. That it has a great harmonica in it and lovely great mid-60s pop. I'd give For Certain Because by the Hollies a good 8 out of 10. And number 12 is Cliff Richard's 3rd album. Definitely his best from his whole career in my opinion. There's so many great songs on this album. It goes from great rock and roll to relaxing, easy listening songs. This makes it a great, enjoyable listen. My favourite songs from this album include the songs I'm Gonna Get You, I Cannot Find a True Love, Evergreen Tree, She's Gone, Left Out Again, Tell Me, and I Love You So. Of course, on this album, Cliff was backed by the Shadows, as was normal for that part of his career. This album was released in 1960 on the EMI Columbia label. The album does start with I'm Gonna Get You, and then it goes into You and I Cannot Find a True Love, Evergreen Tree, She's Gone, Left Out Again, You're Just the One to Do It, Lamp of Love, Chopping and Changing, We Haven't Made, Tell Me, Gee Whiz It's You, I Love You So, I'm Willing to Learn, I Don't Know, and Working After School. Now this album, as I mentioned before, it does have some great early 60s British rock and roll, but it does have some great easy listening. In terms of easy listening, I do recommend the songs Evergreen Tree, Left Out Again, and You're Just the One to Do It. Also, Tell Me is a great shout too. All of those songs are absolutely fantastic. In my opinion, it is his best work out of his entire career. Of course, Cliff has started from 1958 and he's still going to this day. But I'd give this album a solid 8.5 out of 10. And number 11 is an album that does not fit in with the rest of these albums, but it is Green Day's 2004 masterpiece, American Idiot. Now, this has been one of my favourite albums since I first heard it many years ago. The most well-known songs on this album are, of course, American Idiot, Jesus of Suburbia, Holiday, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and Wake Me Up When September Ends. They are absolutely amazing songs. My favourites are Give Me Novocaine and What's Her Name. The tracks on this album are American Idiot, then it goes into the 9-minute long Jesus of Suburbia, and then it goes to Holiday, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Are We the Waiting, St. Jimmy, Give Me Novocaine, She's a Rebel, Extraordinary Girl, Letter Bomb, Wake Me Up When September Ends, and then into another 9-minute long of Homecoming. And then the album concludes with the great track of What's Her Name. Now this is great pop punk rock music. Of course, if you haven't heard this album, definitely give it a listen. Fantastic album. I would definitely give this album a solid 8.5 out of 10. At number 10, we are returning back to the Hollies from the 1960s with Would You Believe from 1966. Now, this album has some great covers and some great originals. This is at the time when the Hollies members Graham Nash, Alan Clark, and Tony Hicks, who were actually still using the pseudonym Ransford, started maturing songwriting with songs such as Hard Hard Yeah. That is a great relaxing track with an incredible electric guitar solo, and Fifi the Flea is such a haunting song with a sad but interesting story. I really do enjoy their cover of Simon and Garfunkel's I Am a Rock. The Hollies gave this song a great rendition. The Mighty I Can't Let Go, which reached number 2 on the UK singles chart, concludes the album. Now all the tracks on this album are I Take What I Want, a great track, Hard Hard Yeah, That's How Strong My Love Is, Sweet Little 16, Oriental Sadness, I Am a Rock, Take Your Time, Don't You Even Care What's Gonna Happen to Me, Fifi the Flea, Stew Ball, I've Got a Way of My Own, and I Can't Let Go. In 1965, I've Got a Way of My Own was actually issued as a B-side of If I Needed Someone. Now this album is great pop rock at its finest, a great British mid-60s album with a very interesting cover that was illustrated. I'd give Would You Believe a solid 9 out of 10. At number 9 is this masterpiece debut album by rock group Led Zeppelin. Every track on this LP is just amazing. My favourites are definitely all of them. If I had to pick 5 from this album, I'd pick the album starter, Good Times Bad Times. The track that follows, Babe I'm Gonna Leave You, followed by the next track, You Shook Me. I'd also pick Your Time Is Gonna Come and Communication Breakdown from side 2. Definitely one of the greatest albums of all time in my opinion. Of course, this album doesn't offer too many songs, as most of them are quite long, but the track listing does include Good Times Bad Times, Babe I'm Gonna Leave You, You Shook Me, Days Are Confused, Your Time Is Gonna Come, Black Mountain Side, Communication Breakdown, I Can't Quit You Baby, and How Many More Times, with How Many More Times being the longest track on the album with 8 minutes 28. Of course, this has some great guitar work by Jimmy Page, great bass work by John Paul Jones, great drumming by John Bonham, and of course fantastic vocals by Robert Plant. Now this album was released in 1969 on the Atlantic label. Of course this album is extremely popular. For example, on Discogs there are currently 4,788 copies for sale. That includes vinyl, CDs, cassette tapes, the whole lot. In my opinion, this album is definitely a 9.5 out of 10. And number 8 is my favourite album by my favourite Beatle. This is the John Lennon Plastic Ono Band's self-titled album. John Lennon has always been my favourite Beatle since I became a Beatles fan back in 2018, and he did a very good job on this album musically, of course with the help of Klaus Voormann and Ringo Starr. This is an album of emotions. It doesn't matter if you're calm or in a sad mood, you're guaranteed to feel emotions while listening to this album. Songs like Mother, Isolation, Look at Me, God, and My Mummy's Dead are the most depressing songs on the album, but yet they are also such great tracks. My Mummy's Dead is a short song and it can be considered to be a haunting song, but to me I like how it ends the album. The track listed on this album are Mother, Hold On, I Found Out, Working Class Hero, Isolation, Remember, Love, Well, 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 Look at Me, God, and My Mummy's Dead. Now of course this album was released in the year 1970 on the Apple Records label, and the Apple label on this album was a white apple instead of the standard green apple which was usually seen on Beatle releases and of course other artists who were signed to the Apple Records label. I'd give this album a solid 9.5 out of 10. At number 7 is the final Beatles studio album. This album has great songs for this hard time for the band. Even though it was the last released, I still regard this album as one of their finest. George Harrison wrote great songs for this album. I'm Your Mine and For You Blue are just great. Even though Dig It and Maggie May are short, unimpressive songs, I still think they deserve to be featured on this album. Dig a Pony, I've Got a Feeling, and The Long and Winding Road are outstanding songs. Don't get me wrong, Let It Be and Get Back, of course, are absolutely amazing songs, but I actually prefer the single versions for those two songs, but I do still listen to the album versions though. The track listing of Let It Be is Two of Us, Dig a Pony, Across the Universe, I'm Your Mine, Dig It, Let It Be, Maggie May, I've Got a Feeling, One After 909, The Long and Winding Road, For You Blue, and Get Back. Now this album was released in 1970 on the Apple Records label. Of course this album was recorded in 1969, but of course it was shelved for Abbey Road to be released first, and as you will know this album was released as the Beatles had broken up. But I still regard this as great late 60s pop rock. An absolutely fantastic album. I'd give this album a good 9.5 out of 10. And number 6 is Amy Winehouse's second album. Most songs on this album I have heard countless times in the past, from when they were released in 2006. I never listened to the album in full until November 5th, 2024. My favourite songs are Rehab, You Know I'm No Good, Me and Mr. Jones, Love Is a Losing Game, and Tears Dry on Their Own. Every other song on this album are definitely amazing too. The track listing for this album is Rehab, You Know I'm No Good, Me and Mr. Jones, Just Friends, Back to Black, Love Is a Losing Game, Tears Dry on Their Own, Wake Up Alone, Some Unholy War, He Can Only Hold Her, and Addicted. Now this album of course was released in 2006 on the Island Record label. Now this of course, Back to Black is one of the best R&B, soul, funk albums of all time. Such an iconic album, of course. This broke her through to the States and it made her a worldwide phenomenon. I'd give this album a solid 9.5 out of 10. And number 5 is Good Friday by the Easy Beats, their 4th studio album and the first they recorded after they relocated to England. This album is just fantastic. It has many great tracks and it does include their signature song Friday on My Mind. My favourite songs from this album include their cover of River Deep Mountain High, where Stevie gives one of his greatest vocal performances. Do You Have a Soul, Saturday Night, You, Me, We Love, Pretty Girl, Friday on My Mind, Could Be the One, Made My Bed, Gonna Lie in It, and Remember Sam. Those are all my favourites. If you enjoy Friday on My Mind and you want to hear more great songs by the Easy Beats, I definitely recommend this album. The track listing of Good Friday is River Deep Mountain High, Do You Have a Soul, Saturday Night, You, Me, We Love, Pretty Girl, Friday on My Mind, Happy As the Man, Hound Dog, Who'll Be the One, Made My Bed, Gonna Lie in It, Remember Sam, and Sea Lion Woman. This album is just great garage and pop rock by the great Australian group. This was all recorded and released by United Artists in 1967 and it was released as Friday on My Mind in the USA. Interestingly enough, it didn't actually get an Australian release until the year 1970. I'd give Good Friday a good 9.5 out of 10. And number 4 is this fantastic Paul McCartney album, which is McCartney 2, released in 1980. Paul has created 11 amazing songs and they all flow together very well. Songs like On the Way, Waterfalls, Nobody Knows and Dark Room are absolutely extraordinary. Paul did a great job on this album and in my opinion McCartney 2 is better than McCartney and McCartney 3 However, those albums are still fantastic, but I feel that Paul crafted these songs better. It's extraordinary how Paul was able to create all these songs, all three of those albums, on his own musically, especially on this album. McCartney 2 track listing includes Coming Up, Temporary Secretary, On the Way, Waterfalls, Nobody Knows, Front Parlour, Summer's Day Song, Frozen Jap, Boogie Music, Dark Room, and it ends with One of These Days. Now this was released on the EMI Parlophone label, again in 1980, and it is great pop rock and extraordinary experimental music. Of course, the song Temporary Secretary is divided among McCartney fans. Some have made it a meme, but others find it absolutely amazing, and I do think that it is a fantastic track. But if you haven't heard McCartney 2, I definitely recommend it. I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. And number 3 is Amy Winehouse's debut album, Frank, from 2003. This is an amazing album. I first heard this album in full on November 3rd, 2024. I had heard a couple of these songs already, but not all of them until that day. My favourite songs are definitely all of them, but the songs that stand out the most to me are Stronger Than Me, You Sent Me Flying, F Me Pumps, In My Bed, Take the Box, and Mr. Magic Through the Smoke. The track listing does include a little 21-second intro, and then it goes into Stronger Than Me, You Sent Me Flying, which is included with the song Cherry, Know You Now, F Me Pumps, I Heard Love Is Blind, Moody's Mood for Love, T.O. Licks, There Is No Greater Love, In My Bed, Take the Box, October Song, What Is It About Men, Help Yourself, Amy, 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 then it goes into an outro, and then it does have Brother and Mr. Magic Through the Smoke. This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest combinations of certain genres of music. Amy put contemporary jazz with R&B and soul all together, and I think it works extremely well. There is some funk in it as well, but it's definitely a great jazz R&B album. I'd give this album a 10 out of 10. And number 2 is The Beatles, of course, widely known as the White Album due to the front cover. This is a fantastic mix of many genres on this double album. This is the high point in the Beatles' musical career, with so many great songs. It also marks the beginning of Apple Records. I could really list almost every single song from this album, as they're all great. The obvious exception here is Revolution 9, although I don't hate it. If I had to pick 5 songs from this album that are my favourites, I'd pick Back in the USSR, Dear Prudence, Happiness is a Warm Gun, Rocky Raccoon, which by the way is my favourite Beatles song, and Yeah Blues. Whilst listening to this double album, you can go from listening to Obla Dee Obla Da straight to The Strange Wild Honey Pie, and Yeah Blues to Mother Nature's Son. These are completely different style of songs that are next to each other on the track listing, and that is what makes this double album so interesting and great to listen to, which is why this is my favourite Beatles album and my second favourite album of all time. The track listing of this album is Back in the USSR, Dear Prudence, Glass Onion, Obla Dee Obla Da, Wild Honey Pie, The Continuing Story of Bungalow Bill, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Happiness is a Warm Gun, Martha My Dear, I'm So Tired, Blackbird, Piggies, Rocky Raccoon, Don't Pass Me By, Why Don't We Do It in the Road, I Will, Julia, Birthday, Yeah Blues, Mother Nature's Son, Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except Me and My Monkey, Sexy Sadie, Helter Skelter, Long Long Long, Revolution 1, Honey Pie, Savoy Truffle, Cry Baby Cry, Revolution 9, and the album ends with the beautiful song of Good Night. Now of course this is a great pop rock late 60s album. Of course it does have some experimental songs such as Revolution 9 of course. And now this album, it's just amazing. I'd give the White Album by the Beatles a 10 out of 10. At number 1 on this list is the Easy Beats second album. I absolutely adore this album. Every song is just outstanding. This album of course has the hits Women, Make You Feel Alright, Come and See Her, Sad, Lonely and Blue, In My Book, and Wedding Ring. But it does include some other great songs like You Are the Light, I'll Find Somebody to Take Your Place, Some Way Somewhere, Something Wrong, and What About Our Love. This is the Easy Beats at their best, not too long before they left for England. Just before they left Australia, they had recorded Volume 3, which did include the smash hit Sorry. Of course, soon after they had arrived in London, they recorded and released the worldwide smash hit Friday on My Mind. But this album shouldn't be ignored or overlooked. Every song is fantastic and it's an Aussie classic. A great album by, in my opinion, one of the best bands of all time. This album was released in 1966 on the Parlophone Alberts label in Australia. It was only released in Australia in the 60s, but it has been reissued in a few different countries in CD in the 80s and 90s, but it is still highly regarded as an Aussie only album. Track listing are Let Me Be, You Are the Light, Women Make You Feel Alright, Come and See Her, I'll Find Somebody to Take Your Place, Some Way Somewhere, Easy As Can Be, I Can See, Sad, Lonely and Blue, Something Wrong, In My Book, What About Our Love, Then I Tell You Goodbye, and Wedding Ring. It's Too Easy by the Easy Beats. It's great mid-60s beat garage rock with some great tracks, and I do recommend it if you haven't heard it already. I'd give this album a solid 10 out of 10. Of course, all of this is my opinion. Your view on this list will differ from mine. This used to be a top 10 list, but I felt like it needed a little update, but I couldn't take some of these albums off this list, so that's why I actually did a top 15. Now this concludes the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I've been trying to get some new ideas out, so I thought this might be a cool idea, just to see what you guys think on my opinion. Thanks for watching though, guys. Please like, subscribe, and peace.